President Putin, recently you ordered your troops into Ukraine, which is a sovereign nation, and this was a mistake. You underestimated the capability and the fighting spirit of the brave Ukrainian people, and that's understandable. My country made that same mistake in Vietnam, in Iraq, and in Afghanistan. These mistakes led to drawn out conflicts that depleted our finances, our materials, and cost us much of our most precious resource of all, American blood.
So I remember being a teenager in the US and arguing against the impeding invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, and literally arguing. At the time I was just in school, right? So you're arguing with classmates.
But why? But those are the people, if we don't go get them, they're going to destroy our way of life.
Right. That's what we're taught, right? And that's what would justify the utter terrorism that we've unleashed on that world.
They hate us.
They hate us because we're blowing them up. You're right. It's a self-created problem, and it's all about oil. It's about wealth. It's about power. It's about hegemony. And, the U.S. unfortunately doesn't have a leg to stand on when it comes to condemning illegal foreign invasion. I think what blew my mind was watching Condoleezza Rice speak out against the invasion. And look, we're all against the illegal invasion, And honestly, I'll have a lot of respect for a Ukrainian citizen who takes up an AK-47 and fires shots at an invading Russian soldier. Just as I would respect a Palestinian who does the same thing against an Israeli soldier who attacks him. And for that, I might be labeled an extremist. But for another, I'm labeled as modern and articulate. And the hypocrisy is they actually used footage of Palestinians, like a Palestinian girl resisting Israeli occupation, Palestinian children being blown up by the Israeli military. They put that as Ukrainians resisting Russia. They actually used that footage of Palestinians resisting Israel, and they mislabeled it as footage of Ukrainians resisting Russia, and they supported that. The same footage they would have labeled as terrorist and violent and evil previously now is being celebrated. Why? Because those that are defending their homeland look more like the general population, right? As the reporters themselves have said, listen, these are blue-eyed, blonde Europeans. They have Netflix accounts. They have Instagram accounts. They're just like us.
I'm sorry. It's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with Putin's missiles and his helicopters and his rockets.
So we have to stand with them. Meanwhile, it was those same journalists, those same reporters, those same elected officials that were beating the drums of war against the victims of Iraq and Afghanistan that we killed. Because frankly, what they do is they just don't value brown life as much. That's what it comes down to. They label Muslims and Arabs as the other, as the foreigner. They otherize them. They dehumanize them. They feed us lies, just like Putin is feeding his country lies to justify the illegal invasion and the massacre. And we've literally killed millions, directly or indirectly, in the Middle East over the last 30 years. We've done of the greatest global acts of terrorism. And had Russia done what we're doing, we'd condemn them. In fact, we are right now. We're condemning them in Ukraine for doing what we've done in Iraq, for doing what we've done in Afghanistan. So we condemn what's happening, but we also condemn the United States when it's done the very same criminal acts of aggression. Let's not mince words here. The invasion of Iraq was criminal, was illegal. It led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of civilians directly, not to mention indirectly. The invasion of Afghanistan was likewise illegal. The occupation of the Palestinian land and the Israeli crimes against humanity funded by US tax dollars, it is illegal. And just as we celebrate the Ukrainians who resist illegal occupation, why don't we celebrate the Palestinians, even the Iraqis, even the Afghanis who have resisted illegal invasion, especially the Afghanis from empire after empire. People are afraid to say this, but I say now is the time we come out and condemn all foreign military invasion and occupation, whether it is by Russia or whether it's by the US. We have to be loyal to principles and truth, not to politics and flags. Before this problem, we saw that Europe was dealing with a huge influx of refugees from the Middle East. Again, from conflicts that we created. Let's be very clear. Daesh, which has created utter chaos in the Middle East, would not have existed had it not been for the illegal invasion of Iraq. We are directly responsible for the atrocity. When I say we, as the American people, for the atrocities Daesh has unleashed in the Middle East and the subsequent refugee problems that happen either as a result of Daesh or happen as a result of the corrupt dictatorships that we support over there, that we fund over there. So the reality is we ourselves, as the United States of America, with the support of Europe, have created the refugee crisis in the Middle East. And what we saw when refugees were literally escaping for their lives to Europe was closed borders, was turning away of ships, was thousands and thousands of refugees drowning to their death while European nations stood by. So they said we cannot take in refugees. But again, now that the refugees are green-eyed, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, white people.
I'm sorry, it's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed.
They're welcoming them with open arms. Again, it shows the hypocrisy. Even how they speak about them, right? So when they talk about European refugees, they talk about families that are victims. When they talk about Muslim refugees, they try to label them just as men that are potential aggressors. The rhetoric, the language that is used is very problematic, and I think it just reflects xenophobia. That's all it reflects.
So this is not getting into the politics between Russia nor Ukraine.
Right.
So you're talking about this is just the blatant double standards and hypocrisy.
Right.
That what should someone who, it's kind of obvious, it's something that now doesn't take much of pointing out. When you see, obviously, again, the reporters, like the many reporters who are coming out, people can see that right now.
Yeah, well, just to put it bluntly, these are not refugees from Syria. These are refugees from neighboring Ukraine. That, quite frankly, is part of it. These are Christians, they're white, they're very similar to many people who live in Poland.
And this is not a developing third world nation. This is Europe.
This isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully.
Talk about the millions of lives that were killed using U.S. taxpayer dollars. Talk about the torture we saw in Abu Ghraib, as you mentioned, and Guantanamo, which continues to this day. The Mauritanian, I think, is an excellent film I recommend everybody to see, about one of the experiences of one of the people who was locked up. The Mauritanian. Again, highly recommend people to watch it. Again, normally I don't encourage people to watch films, but something like this is important for people to be educated about the experience. It's a true story about somebody who was wrongfully locked up in Guantanamo. The documentary Dirty Wars.
I've seen that one.
Everybody's got to watch that. We literally kill people like we play video games, sitting in the Arizona desert, playing with people's lives with these so-called signature drone strikes.
For example, many have argued they create more terrorists than they kill. The night raids in Afghanistan, many have argued they create more terrorists than they get.
I don't disagree with that. When you drop a bomb from a drone, you're investing, you are going to cause more damage than you're going to cause good.
It isn't just top generals either. Former CIA counterterrorism chief Robert Grenier has admitted that drone strikes are creating more enemies than we are removing from the battlefield. Even some former drone operators themselves have pointed out that drone strikes have only fueled the feelings of hatred that ignited terrorism in groups like ISIS, while also serving as a fundamental recruitment tool similar to Guantanamo Bay.
That kill civilians mostly, and you know what? Even the person pulling the trigger doesn't know who the heck he's killing, because what they're killing is signatures. So if somebody fits a pattern, if they go to a certain location, that's enough to get them killed. It's disgusting. We're killing people without even knowing how, all paid for by US tax. I don't wonder why they hate us. So again, listen, we are people of principle. We're people of peace, of justice, of equity. We believe that you cannot get close to the Creator without love and sincere service to the creation. And on the day of judgment, after monotheism, one of the first things that people will be questioned about is sacred blood. How you shed the blood of the creation of God. It doesn't matter what the religion is. If you unjustly shed blood, there will be hell to pay for that. And unfortunately, in the U.S., we're very complicit in shedding innocent blood abroad. And, we see the havoc of that when other governments do so. We see the uproar against Russia we should have seen that uproar in the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. And to be fair, we did by some segments of our fellow Americans. I mean, I remember my father taking me to DC and we protested against, but it needed to have been louder. And we see in the end, illegal invasion doesn't work. Alhamdulillah.
So this is not about one religion versus the other religion, or this group versus that group. This is about justice. This is about, awakening, good human beings who are in these positions, like you mentioned, to go ahead and make a difference.
Let's live up to our ideals. That's all I'm calling for. Look, I obviously believe in America. I mean, I choose to be an American citizen. I choose to live here. I think despite the horrific problems our nation has, it's actually still a bit more just than many others.